The Red Show. I'm here interviewing two really remarkable people. One of them I've known for quite some time. Um, I'm Kenneth L. Jr. I'm the technical director for We Three Queens Productions. And Yvonne and Dean, would you introduce yourselves and would you tell us your pronouns?
Sure. I'm Ivan Davila. My pronoun is he, him, his, and my partner is right here.
I'm Dean Reichard, and I also use he, him, his.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get right into this. The first question I have, how did you two meet?
Oh, that's an easy one. We both auditioned for Jesus Christ Superstar at St. Mark's Players back in 2006, and we both got cast. And interesting side note, my friend Justin had auditioned with Dean, and he told me, oh, there's this really cute guy that auditioned with me, and you need to make sure you go meet him. So I did. I made a point of going to introducing myself to him because of my friend Justin.
How did you navigate telling your partner?
You know what? We were having this conversation, and we couldn't pinpoint the moment at which I told him. But I remember throughout my life, because I've been dealing this for so long, that I got to a point in my life where I had to tell anyone that I was interested in sexually that I was HIV positive before anything happened, because I had gotten a lot of rejection in the past. So I thought, let me just put it out there so that people are aware, in case, we move forward. So I thought I had told him over dinner, and I think you said you knew.
I don't remember knowing him and not knowing that fact. I don't remember any time at which I knew him but didn't know he was positive. I feel like I knew it since the minute I knew him. So I mean, I must have.
Which is possible, because I do tell people, if I meet them and I'm interested, I immediately let that be known. It's not something that I hide necessarily.
Dean, this question is for you. How did you feel when you first found out?
Really, I just thought, well, we'll have to take some precautions, which I was already doing every day of my life anyway. I mean, it really didn't make a huge difference at the time, because remember what time it was. I mean, and still honestly is. I mean, it's always that time, really. Ever since this happened, it never unhappened. So I just said, well, we'll have to be careful, which I am every day that ends with Y anyway, so no big difference. So that's kind of how it felt to me. It was not a big thing.
Perfect. This question is for both of you. What would you say are the most common misconceptions about HIV?
As someone who's HIV positive, I think if you find out that you're HIV positive and you think your life is over, that's a misconception. Your life isn't over. On the flip side, people nowadays are taking the whole HIV thing to not seriously enough, because they say, oh, there are treatments out there. So if I get sick, I can take drugs. Well, it's not an easy ride. The drugs are super expensive. There are side effects to the drugs, and you basically have to, from now on until the day you die, you're going to be seeing a doctor every 3 to 4 months. So it's not an easy ride. So don't be complacent. I think prevention is the best defense, I guess. So those are two things that I came to mind right away.
For me, I think the common misconceptions are, as with any illness, ailment, the person is way more than that. Like, someone who's HIV positive doesn't just sit around and be HIV positive all day. That's not what they do. It's not what they do for a living. It's not what they do for a hobby. It doesn't define them at all. It's just a minor part of who they are. So I think that people sometimes think, oh, they're HIV positive, so therefore that's what they are. I mean, that's all they are. This person is so many million more things than that. Some good, some bad, some interesting, some not so interesting, whatever. I mean, the person is still a full person. They just happen to have this one aspect of their life that is happening.
When you inform people about your status, what types of reactions do you generally receive?
It's been, throughout the years, it's been a slightly different reaction, depending on who I'm telling and what the relationship is to me. Obviously, telling family members was hard, and there were a few tears. I got diagnosed in 1991, so at the time I had already been in a 2-year relationship with my partner. So I remember having to come home and telling him. And that was probably one of the hardest. And we both cried for about a week. And then immediately when I found out, I went to tell a couple of friends because I was so dumbfounded. I needed to tell someone. So, and it's been nothing but supportive, mostly. Nowadays, it's really not even a big deal. People are like, yeah, so we're way much more open about it now than we were back in the 90s or the 80s.
Take me to the moment when you were first diagnosed. When was it and what went through your mind?
I was diagnosed in 1991, but I knew that I had gotten infected in 1983 because in 1983 I got really, really sick, and so sick that my father sent me a plane ticket to go stay with my aunt so that she could take care of me. She lived in Florida. At the time, the doctor said, you have a virus. We don't know what the virus is. The term HIV didn't exist then. There were no treatments. But miraculously, I started wasting away. I started getting really skinny and losing weight and losing weight. But after that was over, I got better on my own. I just got better. So fast forward 8 years later to 1991, and my doctor says, hey, you want to get an HIV test? And I'm like, oh, sure, thinking there's no way I can have it. I was super positive, right? Well, it turns out I was positive, but not in a good way. And I was just in shock. I was first in shock. I guess you go through all the stages of death, anger, denial, bargaining, all those things. And I went, like I said, I told a couple of friends, and then I went home and I had to tell my partner. And at the time, the only treatment that existed was AZT, which the triple cocktails that exist now did not exist then. And pretty much at the time, 1991, it was still considered a death sentence. I have good friends who died right around the early 90s. God, I'm getting a little emotional here. But yeah, it's okay. You know, it felt like I was gonna die. I mean, I felt like there's no hope for me. This is the end. Yeah, that's about it.
And that's almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
This question is for both of you. Having lived through the beginnings of the epidemic in the 80s, how do you look back, remember, or view that time through your personal experiences?
The most horrific thing about that time was actually seeing people like constantly, the people getting sick, going out to bars and seeing people with the lesions, the Kaposi sarcoma lesions on them. And just the fact that because it was a disease that was striking gay men mostly, people didn't really care about it for years. And there was a lot of rumor. It was called the gay cancer in the beginning, and we would talk about it. And then I had friends who started actually dying, and that was the worst part. Friends getting sick and friends dying to me was the worst part of the whole thing. And the fact that people thought they didn't know exactly how it got transmitted, so people were scared. But it was a time of confusion. I mean, it's so funny that we're in a pandemic time right now. And except that HIV was not airborne, I mean, can you imagine if it had been? Yeah, there was a lot of fear, and there was some cruelty towards, I think, I remember one time someone referred to me as dirty because I had HIV. And that felt to me like really cruel, you know? But I don't know. It was also a time where gay rights in many ways came together because of groups like ACT UP and stuff like that. So I don't know. Do you have anything to add?
It was a scary time. It was like constantly waking up every day and finding out somebody else was gone or somebody else was sick that you knew. It's not that different from what we're going through right now, except what we're going through right now is kind of like that on steroids in a way. It feels like it's happening faster, although we've looked up the statistics and actually HIV has killed a lot more people than the coronavirus so far anyway. It was just very similar to you. every day you're finding out something new, some new horrible news about someone you know, or their mother, or their sister, or their brother, or you, or every day you're finding something terrible out. You know, it's like kind of a scary time, just not that different from right now.
Yvonne, what advice would you give someone who's been diagnosed with HIV?
The first advice that I would give them is to realize that they're not alone, to try to find other people who are dealing with HIV. There are tons of support groups out there. Get surrounded with people who understand you. Don't be afraid of it. It's not the end of your life. And of course, get a good doctor, and you need to establish a good relationship with your doctor and make sure you take your meds every night and take care of yourself. You have to, from now on, you're gonna be dealing, I don't think about HIV at all, except every night when I have to take my pills. And then for like a second, I think, oh yeah, I have to take my pills. It's become second nature to take my pills. So I think the advice that I would give to someone who's just found out it's not the end of the world, you'll be fine. You'll get through this.
For both of you, how can people be better advocates to someone living with HIV?
Do we go first?
Well, I just think that just to try to get rid of the stigma, as even like there's sometimes now a bit of a stigma when you find out somebody has corona. You think, oh, they must have done something. Oh, how did they get it? The first thought is, how did they get it? And it's not always relevant to even think about that. That's not really the issue anymore. And I think like when you hear a comment made in everyday conversation, you need to, when you hear somebody say something derogatory about people with HIV, you need to say something. You know, you need to say, wait a minute, stop. That's not cool that you just said that, you know? So sometimes I think people don't realize that there's people, they know someone who's affected by it somehow. Whether they know it or not, they do.
This guy right here is one of my biggest advocates. He does the AIDS walk every year, even now, even though it was virtual this year, he did it. I think it's just basically there are so many organizations you can get involved with, you know, Human Rights Campaign Fund, Women Walker Clinic, so many worthy organizations, if you really truly want to get involved as an advocate. But really it's just someone who has so many friends, and just supporting people who are going through this in any way you can is just the best way to do it.
Well, Yvonne, I thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts or things you want to say to the people that are watching?
Yes, I do. I was diagnosed in 1991. And then 10 years later, in 2001, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a cancer that normally doesn't kill people. It's highly treatable. But unfortunately, when it got diagnosed in me, I kept going to my doctor and saying, there's something wrong, there's something wrong. It took months. It was already stage 4. The cancer was everywhere, and I should have died. I really should have died. At that time, I thought life can't get any worse than that, which is what I had thought when I had originally been diagnosed with HIV. Life cannot possibly get worse than that. So my final thought is, trust me, life does get better. Because of the cancer, once I got done with chemo, I started getting involved in theater classes and dance classes, and my life took a turn. Got involved in the arts, which is basically where all my friends, my partner, what has become my life is the arts, theater. And so it doesn't matter how bad it gets, there's always something great waiting around the corner, which is appropriate for this time as well. This pandemic will be over and things will be great at some point again. So yeah, no matter how bad it gets, it always gets better.
Dean?
I think that's a good thought to end on. There is life beyond your diagnosis. If you get diagnosed today, here we are 30 years later talking about his diagnosis. So there is life beyond your diagnosis. It's not the end, it's the beginning of something new.
Well, I thank you both for taking your time to talk with me. I'm like getting emotional over here because I'm like, God damn it, Yvonne. Thank you. Thank you so much. And everybody else, enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.